Let's talk here about Tony Burke and his performance, something pretty serious to talk about here, which is the way Tony Burke carried on today at the National Press Club. Now, this bloke, again, is part of a team that think they will rule forever, and he's a bloke who thinks that, if he stands on one leg for long enough, he'll eventually end up replacing Albanese as the Prime Minister. But he's got a little touch of that sort of Californian politician I was showing before. Why? Roll the tape. Have a look at this.
There were specific recommendations that she put forward.
I beg your pardon. No. I'll be interrupted on many things, but I will not be interrupted where I'm talking about someone who has put herself out there publicly, and I'm getting the first chance I've had in a while to be able to say how much I support her work.
And when he was being pushed about the Palestinian cohort that's come to Australia since the war, that he started to play a strange game. In fact, I'll get our team to look for this here. When he was talking around today that, well, why am I being asked about the security threats in and around the Israeli population? Michael, I could almost hear you kicking the TV from 1,000 k's away.
Tony Burke. I don't know where to start on Tony Burke. He ranks as I think he's basically a danger to social cohesion in this country. And I think he's proved that during his period as minister. We know his history of bringing people from Gaza, and we're a country that believes in humanitarian access to this country for people in need, for refugee status. I mean, we're well known worldwide for that. But when other Arab countries aren't taking people from Gaza, I'm still waiting to hear Mr Burke say why we have. And of course they should return home. And those people, by the way, he made the kind of Israelis who've come here. Well, if they don't have refugee status or coming through the normal channels, but have come here because of their concerns about their safety, then the same should apply. And now he's talking about bringing more people from Gaza. I mean, Mr Burke, you've got to remember, 40% or more of Gazans support Hamas, probably more. Support Hamas. What? Where you're so good, and our screening over there in Egypt and some office in Cairo is so good that you've brought to Australia only those who don't support Hamas. Well, who do they support, Mr Burke? What, the PA? Or do they support nobody? Gee, we're lucky, Paul, that we've got every person that's come here from Gaza, we've got no Hamas supporters amongst them. It's just breathtaking. This guy has presided over, with his boss and Penny Wong, the greatest increase in antisemitism we've seen in this country's history. And for him to be talking about bringing more people from Gaza at this time, Tony, you should go back to one of your previous portfolios. This is not a portfolio. You're a danger to this country. The way you are carrying on and increasing, the Jewish community are fearful in this country, right? They're fearful. You're bringing people from Gaza. Jewish people in this country fear for their safety. You're bringing more people? Really, Tony? Really?
Look, the inevitable pushback there is going to be that we trust our screening process, et cetera, but also the theory about when it's time to go back. We all know that there's nothing to go back to, or not a lot to go back to at the moment. But Joe, it is this bit that I do think is worth a chat, because we know what he's trying to say. We've got the tape of him basically sort of whataboutism here. Have a look.
And I wonder why it is that I haven't been asked the question about returning for any of the Israelis who I've also provided visas for. Whenever we have taken people on a humanitarian basis and the humanitarian need has gone away, some people have completely found a home in Australia, they are valued members of our community, and they decide to stay.
Now, not so hard to decode the trolling language that's involved there. I think he's playing games.
Yeah, look, I think Australia has always been had a generous humanitarian intake program, far more generous than a lot of the other countries that you've mentioned. The Arab countries have been disgraceful in talking up their support for Gaza or Palestine, but never doing anything practical to help it. But just because they're bad doesn't mean that we should be bad also. My understanding with this cohort is that they are people who are already going to come here, and that it was already sort of in train, if you like, but they hadn't physically been able to get out of the country. These are people who could be under threat from Hamas. We know that Hamas is going around now, summarily executing people in the streets and trying to find anyone deemed to be a collaborator. So a lot of the people coming here could actually be people who Hamas deems as collaborators with Israel. And I think the disparity in the numbers, which I imagine there probably is, I don't know how many Israelis we're taking, but it's pretty clear that Israel is there's far less of a humanitarian catastrophe than Gaza is. I mean, what happened obviously on October 7 was absolutely disgraceful and unforgivable and the work of evil animals. But Tel Aviv still stands.
Yeah, but also, I mean, he's being a smartass where he's basically saying, in terms of the war zone, right? When people are coming out of a war zone, oh, look, everything's, no questions whatsoever allowed to be asked. And then again, the other, I think it's obvious the game he was playing. All right, because of that lovely little sojourn about my potential trip to Washington, D.C., we're out of time, lads. I love you both. Talk to you soon. If the boss wants to call, he has my number.